Okay, so if I want to select something more complex, and I'm just going to pick this little part of the building, this little section, okay? Obviously, this isn't going to do it because it's going to be all hard-edged and weird. And my loose polygon or lasso tool is going to be way too sloppy. So I'm going to go here to the pen tool. Okay, so let's go to a new. If I make a straight line, that's a straight line. But if I'm doing a curve, I'm going to come out in front of it, drop it, and pull. Okay? Now, let's keep going. So now we've got a curve, okay? Okay, so here's our black arrow tool and our white arrow tool. So right now we just made this line, okay? I got my black arrow tool and it will move the whole thing, okay? Or I can come in here to my white arrow tool and I will get this handle. And then I can adjust it. Now, if you notice, it's adjusting both sides of the curve, okay? If I don't want it to do that, I can hold Option and it will only affect one side of the curve. Okay, here's another thing. People, so I'm back to the pen tool. People go like this and they close the curve and then they go, okay, now I can fill my shape. And they go into background color. Oops, wrong color, hang on. And they go edit, fill, foreground color, and it just fills the whole thing and ignores the shape. The reason is, this is a work path. This is not a shape, okay? Or this is not a selection. It's a work path, which just means it's a path, okay? So over up here, you have a palette under Windows where all the palettes live. Right here, it's called Paths. I already have it over here. So here's the window right there. So I'm just gonna pull it out for a minute. So here's my work path. That's what it's called, a work path, okay? Now, if I Command or Control click on the thumbnail, not the word, not the bar, the thumbnail, it will turn that into a selection and now I can fill it. You have to click on, you have to Command or Control click on the thumbnail. Now here's another thing with that, because you're gonna see this across a bunch of different platforms or things in Illustrator or in Photoshop. I don't like saying Illustrator. So let's say I make a shape here on a new layer and I fill it. So now we have this shape on this layer by itself, right? So let's grab this, move it over here. If I want to select this shape, I can just do the same thing I just did. So you're going to see this works across a lot of different things in Photoshop. If I Command or Control click the little thumbnail here, it will make a selection of that object.
So you're clicking the thumbnail on the layer panel? On the layer panel?
It should have a little preview right here. I don't know why it's not doing that either. Yes, I'm Command or Control clicking this right here, not here. See, it doesn't do anything. Wait, let's just select it. It doesn't do anything, right? Or if I go on the bar, it doesn't do anything. It has to be on the thumbnail, and that it will do it. Okay? There's other things I can do over here. I can save this path. I can delete it. I can make it a selection, which is what we just did. I can fill it, blah, 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 all these other things. So every window you have, by the way, so let's open up a window. Every window will have this little menu right here, the little hamburger stack thing, and you can throw it out and you'll have other things you can do in that palette, okay? Now, most of the time, here's another thing with Photoshop. A lot of things in Photoshop, well, in all these programs, they exist in, I don't know, 15 different places, okay? So it exists in your palette. It'll exist up here somewhere under something in your file or one of your menus up here in your menu bar. It'll probably exist right here somewhere in your control bar. It might exist over, it'll exist in a lot of different places, okay? The exact same thing, which is why, and by the way, also up here in your menu, your hotkeys are always right over here, okay? So whatever the hotkey is for a tool, you can just, it'll list it right here. Now, sometimes they don't have one, and it's kind of a pain in the ass. A lot of times you can go on, I can just go online and I can find it. There actually can be one. You can also assign them. I never do that, but they're, even the ones that aren't listed, a lot of times they actually do have a hotkey. So in the case of this little building right here, I'm gonna go, start here, go straight across, and now right now I'm just using it sort of like the polygon lasso tool. And let's say I want to take just the roof off. So now I'm going to come out here to here. So my point ended right there. And I want to come to here because I think that's about how far I can get it. And I'm going to pull my little thing there and let it go. And then I'm going to pull it back over here. And you can see I can readjust it. But now I'm going to hold down command. So here's the only two controls you need to remember while you're using the pen tool. One is command, which means I can come over here and I can get this. And then I don't want it to affect this. This isn't too bad. So I'm going to hold down option, which is going to turn it into just working that one side. And now I'm going to go to my here and I'm going to click command thumbnail. And I'm going to go X, B. And now I took that little roof line out, but it's a curve. Let's look at this in our layers palette. I want to talk about, so we know that we have, let's make a new layer here, because this is this one. So I'm going to rename this, double click it, curve, and make a new layer. So I'm going to plus, make a new layer, get rid of that. And in this thing, so let's just fill this whole layer with this. So we know here in our layer, we can go right here and we can reduce the opacity of whatever's on that layer, right? We know that, yes?
Yes.
Now, so let's look at something else. So we have this here. We have all these, they're called overlays, okay? What overlays are, it's probably a better explanation for it, but an overlay is over something, it's a layer over something, and the different overlays that you pick change the way that that layer interacts with the layer underneath it, okay? So let's look at an easy one. If I want to make this, give this a different vibe, I'm going to grab some red here. I'm going to go back up to my layer, and I'm going to fill it, which I could do right here, edit, fill, foreground color, and there it is, right? Now, if I come over here to my layer overlays and I go multiply, I can get a monochromatic idea. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because it's messing with the transparency. That's what it's doing. So let's go through a few more of them. There's color burn, not very useful. I use this constantly, by the way. You'll see later on. Lighter, screen, color dodge, overlay, soft light. Soft light's not terrible. Hard light, vivid light, not doing much of anything. Hang on, I think it's on that. So that's multiply. Let's go back. Weird that it almost never doesn't do anything. I love it. So that's kind of interesting. There's exclusion, subtract, divide. I like this one a little bit because it gives it this really desaturated but warm kind of thing. Overdone, too much. Now, another thing I could do, like if I go here and I go, wow, that's really saturated, I could come in here and go and loose and drop the opacity and maybe get something interesting that way, okay? Now, another thing I can do, wait, am I in the curve layer? Oh, well. I'm gonna go back up here to normal, okay? I'm gonna change this to, let's go to a different, I'm just gonna grab this blue. So now I filled it with blue, and now I'm gonna go I could do multiply. I could desaturate this a little bit, which I'll talk about tomorrow. Yeah, a little more like that. And I can start to convert this to a little bit of a night scene. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So let's go here. Like I could come in here. This is going to be screaming, but I'll adjust it. Let's do this. Hang on. Got 100. This is at 16. That's not enough. Hang on. So I'm going to put my opacity all the way up because I can adjust it again later. I could start putting lights on here. I could start coming in here. By the way, so I'm making a selection. Then I'm going to hold shift. And I can make another selection. And I'm going to put this on another layer. So let's make another layer. And let's try, and again, I can adjust this so it doesn't matter. Now I'm going to go boom. Now I'm going to try my overlays again. See what I can find in here, if I can find anything good. So this one, color dodge. I'm just rolling through them here, seeing if my difference isn't too bad, but here's what I'm going to have to do. I'm going to drop down the opacity. And you could see I could start to light up some of these windows if I wanted to, and go in around and start lighting. I could also come down here. And maybe I would have to lighten this up probably a little bit. So let's lighten this up a little. Because what I want to do is get some spill in here. You see that pumped it up, but not overly pumped it up. That's better. Now, I could also, let's try this. I'm going to duplicate this layer. Yeah, now it's a little more, and I'm going to drop the opacity on this layer. Because that way I can go get myself another layer. I'll talk about this here in a second. And I'm going to go make another layer. I'm going to cheat this. I would have to do some erasing out after I'm done with this, so just know that. Oops, screwed up. And by the way, this isn't the way the light would work. It doesn't matter. Then I'm going to grab this. And then I'm going to grab, okay, so I'm going to grab, and I'll show you this in a second. Grab my gradient tool. It's too much. Just do that. Now this one I might do. Actually, that's not terrible right there. That's not bad. You said we're starting to light that up down there? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I can start to turn this into, and if you notice, I'm keeping it fairly subtle, especially down here. I don't like this one up here yet, but I would play with it. Keeping this fairly subtle and getting a little bit of a purple value in there, which I kind of like. I could also come in here and go, well, there'd be some hot spots in here, like you're seeing right there. So I'm going to grab one of those. I'm going to go pretty hot here. That might be too much. Because what'll happen down here is you'll have hot spots in the window. You'll get a couple of hot spots down there like that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
But also, so I can take the same idea and take it here. So let's grab this. I'm going to make a layer over this, and let's just try something easy first. I want to make a selection. Okay, so wait, let's look at this real quick. So this right here is your gradient tool. So if I click that up in my control bar, if you can see, I've got it going to the foreground color to transparent. See how you're seeing the checkerboard?
Yes.
Okay, so that tells me I'm going transparent, right? I've got it on the first one here, which is just your standard rolling, gradient, okay? If I go to this one, it'll do a radial. If I go to this one, it'll do an angle. If I go to this one, it'll do sort of a reflected gradient. And then if I go to this one, it'll do a diamond. What's that noise? It'll do a diamond, okay? For me personally, I never use these, I use this. Okay, now I can also click here and like, I have all these options. Like these are ones they've sort of pre-done. I can just borrow it, right? Turn that mic off, whatever that is. I'm gonna go to basics. Okay, here's my basics. Color, foreground color, I think that's what it is, hang on. Actually, I don't know what that one is. Go back here, right here. I foreground a background, I think. This is color to transparent and then black and white, okay? So I'm using foreground color to transparent, and I'm gonna change it to, again, a warm. So I'm gonna go a little too warm, but that's all right. And then I'm gonna go take my selection. I just wanna play around with this a little bit. So I'm gonna take all this. I'm going to take my gradient, color to transparent. Let's do it this way. And then I'm going to go right here. Now I could also, I don't want to do it. I'm going to go see if I can find anything cool here. Now it's over a very dark gray. That's kind of cool. That's not bad. Too much. Yeah, I don't mind that. You guys can see that little subtle red, right?
Yes.
Now,
Yeah.
I should have saved my selection, but I didn't. Well, let's just do this. So I'm going to click this. Yeah, see, I didn't get it all. I'm going to make another selection. And then I'm going to go make another layer, see if I can hot this up. So the light source to me would be towards the bottom. And I think I'm just going to see if I can pull back the transparency on this, or the opacity. Yeah, that's not too bad. just so it gets a little more light at the bottom, okay? Now, I'm gonna make another selection, another layer, another selection. I think I'm just gonna go, this is black. So basically when you do these overlays, it doesn't usually affect black all that much. I'll just do it like that. And then I'm gonna go with the same red. Same red, grab my same gradient. And I'm gonna see what I can do here. That's not too bad. Because if he's getting, if that light's coming from the bottom, he's gonna get bottom lit, correct?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's kind of cool. That's pretty good. And I'm just going through these. Like I've been using these for 1,000 years, and I couldn't sit here and tell you what every one of them does. So I just kind of roll through them. Make that a little more subtle. And then just one more, I might go. That's great. Save that selection, so I don't know what happened. Doesn't matter. Okay. Now I'm just going to do the one cool thing and see if I can make that work. So this is probably going to be, again, I don't really worry too much about the color I throw down, and you'll see why probably tomorrow I'll go over this. Because I can just adjust them. So I just know I want a bluish thing. And then I'm going to make a top down light maybe, or let's just make it top down. Just to cool it off and play off that warm cool thing. Real subtle. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what that does is, that's really cool, is when I put a color over something, as you can see, like I made that selection, it sort of pushed that lighting, that color, and sort of wrapped it under what's underneath it. Does that make sense? Married it. Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So you'll see as we're going through here, especially in the beginning of this class where we're at, that I use this stuff. I use this all the time. A lot. Sometimes I'll be doing a digital painting or something, and I might go, you know, have it pretty far along, and then I'll go, I wonder what happens if I just put a gradient over the whole top of this thing and do a bluish gradient over the whole thing, and then I'll do it, and I'll go through the, you know, I'll start going through the overlays, and it might all of a sudden turn it like a weird color. Like I might be using a blue, but it'll turn it into a weird reddish, weird color. And I'll go, wow, that's cool. Like it's just because that's what the overlay does. And then it might send me down that trajectory where I go, well, I like that. I'm just going to leave it. You know what I mean? And I'll start painting to that. Okay. So that's sort of that, what I was talking about earlier, that little happy accident thing. It's like, I can turn it off or on. I know kind of that it could potentially do something like that. So it's sort of like, to me, it sort of feels a little more like painting when I do that kind of thing, like traditional painting. But your overlays, I mean, you can do so much stuff with them right off the bat. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
see this real quick. By the way, if you're double clicking something, if you notice I double click things and it opens in Photoshop, right? You on your computer, at least on a Mac, I forgot how you do it. You can do it on Windows too, but it's a different process. If I go get info on this file, Command I, and it's like right here, open with Adobe. Sometimes it'll say open with Picture Viewer or whatever. I'll switch it. And then it'll go, once I do that right here, it'll say change all. And then from then on out, anything that's sort of an image that I double click, it will automatically open in Photoshop. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
So I'm going to take this thing and let's leave the color in it. You know, because it's so post-apocalyptic looking. See what I'm seeing? It just gives everything a vibe right off the bat. And I could also now, let's try this. You know, if I drop some post-apocalyptic looking character walking into the camera right there, it already says a lot. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And, you know, I could pull this back. There's a million things I can do with it. All right, does everybody understand that?
Yes.
And everybody understands the gradient tool?
Yes.
What I would do with the gradient tool right off the bat is just get a empty, by the way, this right here, your work path, which looks like your palettes, I can just click off this layer and it'll turn it off. You notice it's still there. So I can click it back on, or I can just click it off so I don't have to look at it. Let me get rid of that. Gradient tool. Now, let's look at this real quick. This other one over here, this one is linear. That's one I'm using. Here's the radial. So it makes a radial. Here's the angle, makes an angle. Here's the reflection one. Oops. This one can come in kind of handy because it just does sort of a bar. And then this one I think is the pyramid one. Yeah. Like a little starburst. But that's what the other ones are. I tend to just use this one. Now, if I go to here and I go black and white, it's going to give me a black and white gradient. Okay. If I go here, this one, yeah, this is color to background or foreground to background. Yeah, that's what that is. So that could come in handy. This one, what is this one? Oh, custom. I don't know what that means. Or I could come down here and go into these and go, you know, some of these are really handy too sometimes. Sometimes I'll go in here, like just like I said, when I'm doing a painting or something, and I'll just throw a gradient over it and an overlay over it, try different overlays and see what that does. I don't like to be overly use grays. Okay, but I tend to use, and it's just me, this one, which is just does that. Okay. Also, so if I go, I'll go back here. Let's go to back to our blue. And then again, not quite isn't too bad. It feels like it needs to be desaturated a little bit. You know, and I can start to get a little more late evening kind of thing without going completely dark. Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
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 Really simple, okay? But it's really effective. I think it's a really effective tool. I use it all the time. For tomorrow, I want you to use that pen tool. Now, remember with the pen tool, when you're in the pen tool, the only two things you got to remember if you want to shift, if I hit Command or Control, I'm going to shift to the white arrow key, and that'll allow me to manipulate my pen or my line. And then if I want to just manipulate the one side, I shift to the Option or Alt key, and that'll just affect the one side. You need to play around with it a little bit to get, and by the way, this takes a little bit, you know, you have to kind of get used to it. Once you get used to it, you'll be great at it, okay? The pen tool is important. It's in every program you guys are going to ever see, okay? You have to be good at the pen tool, and you will be by the end of this class. You'll be at least decent with it, okay? It's not, once you get it, it's not a big deal, okay? A lot of people are super weird about the pen tool. Don't be weird about it. Don't be weird about anything, by the way, because 99% of the stuff, it's just once you know how to do it, it's not a big deal. Okay. Okay, so I want you to take a more curved selection, make that selection, and just cut and paste it. I don't care what you do with it. And then I want you to play with your overlays. Okay. And I don't care what that is, just like throw some color over it and start playing around with those overlays, however you want to do it. And I also want you to try the gradient tool. That's it. That's all I want tomorrow. Does that make sense? And by the way, I don't care what image you use. You can use whatever you want. But I would, well, do one where you use a black and white image, and do one where you use a color image. You can just use that cityscape image you want. I don't care. But do both. Does that make sense? Okay, now remember this. Your overlay only works when it's on its own layer. Okay? You can't do it on the same layer. It has to be over a layer because then the two things interact with each other.
Sounds good.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll see you guys
Thank
in the
you.
morning.
Thank you.
Okay,
See ya.
thank you.
Thank you.